It's fire time again! Starship 26 test campaign continues. Raptor ignition imminent at Starbase, another Starship stacked, SpaceX gets angry with the FAA, will Starlink harm people? And Amazon finally launches its new constellation after so many delays. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. This is Starship 26, SpaceX's strangest creation. It stands out from the rest of the Starship lineup. Let's clear that up real quick. This prototype is notably devoid of flaps and completely misses the heat shield. A theory floating around suggests that perhaps this model is an expendable ship version, solely for satellite deployment. Is that true though? Here's the catch, it lacks a payload bay, so it's not deploying anything anytime soon. Another theory is that Starship 26 might be designated for tasks like a Starship tanker or an in-orbit propellant transfer vehicle. Starship tanker does in fact sound exciting. However, given that this prototype doesn't come with bigger internal tanks and considering the importance of reusability for tankers, this seems unlikely. So what's my bet? This prototype was crafted to test out the in-orbit propellant transfer process. They have to do it at some point for NASA's Human Landing System program, and with a completely naked vehicle, it's one thing less to worry about after its mission is done. SpaceX may just let it burn up in the atmosphere. On the other hand, it may turn out that after all ground tests, this ship will just be scrapped. After all, SpaceX isn't particularly sentimental about its ready-for-flight prototypes. Rewinding to February, the testing saga of Ship 26 began. Back then, it was positioned on suborbital pad A and later underwent two cryogenic tests. One involving a partial fill of both the liquid oxygen and the methane tanks, and the other one a partial fill of just the LOX tank. Following these tests, Ship 26 was moved to the rocket garden for engine fitting. However, the orbital launch fiasco resulted in a quick setback in its return to the launch site. It took until September for the vehicle to be brought back, paving the way for further tests a month later. On October 9th, Highway 4 was closed off by the sheriff. Following the typical pad clearing procedure, the suborbital tank farm began its venting routine. This is always the first step. It indicates that the cooling process of the installation has begun. It's a preparation to be able to fuel the prototype. And not long after, a frosty ring became visible on the main liquid oxygen tank. This was swiftly followed by frost appearing on the header tank. Wow, slow down Felix, what is a header tank? For those unfamiliar with the term, allow me to explain. Most ordinary rockets typically boast two tanks per stage, one designated for fuel and another for oxidizer. But Starship is anything but an ordinary rocket. It is designed for full reusability. Within its upper stage there is an array of 4 fuel tanks, not 2. Starting from the base there is the primary liquid oxygen tank, followed by the main liquid methane tank. At the top, nestled within the nose cone, lie 2 additional smaller header tanks. These header tanks exist to solve a crucial problem during a Starship's descent through the atmosphere, something traditional upper stages never do. As the Starship makes its return journey to Earth, its fuel tanks are nearly depleted. Due to gravity during the belly flop maneuver, any remaining fuel clings to the tank's sidewalls due to the orientation of the ship. This would be a huge problem for the engines, as without a source of fuel, they won't be able to fire up, causing the whole thing to smash right into the ground. To prevent this, SpaceX introduced header tanks. They are not used for the launch, so they are still completely filled when the Starship comes down again. Consequently, this prevents any fuel sloshing during the ship's horizontal descent. A relatively simple yet genius solution. Now that you understand the role of a header tank, hopefully you see why it is so important to test it before the launch. Without these tanks, landing is off the table. For Ship 26, however, these are unlikely to be used. No heat shield, no problem. Following the test on October 9th, subsequent road closures were cancelled. But this is where it gets interesting. Cameron County announced new ones for October 12th, 13th and 16th. By the time you're watching this, Ship 26 might have either undergone another test or is just gearing up for one. With the initial focus on the LOX side of things, SpaceX might have tested both the methane and header tanks for the methane side next. The test sequence should involve a spin prime and culminate in an epic static fire with all 6 Raptor engines igniting at once. We're optimistic that SpaceX will, in their usual style, share footage of this milestone on X, hopefully shedding some light on the purpose of this prototype. While the prospect of a static fire is exciting, the real buzz, of course, revolves around Starship's second flight. Anticipation is at 11 as we await the modified launch permit. Launch permit, a wonderful combination of words. Based on previous information from the Federal Aviation Administration, it seems we're merely days, or at most a few weeks away from its publication. By the time it releases, the second stack should be ready to launch, but for now it isn't. As expected, on October 9th, the hot staging ring was once again taken down. In fact, they might have just stacked it again for the Cybertruck commercial. Another nice side effect, if not every single step costs millions of dollars. Given the efficiency of the SpaceX team once all needed fixes are applied, reassembling the entire setup can be accomplished in mere hours. Progress also remains steadfast at the orbital tank farm, where Starbase engineers are busy integrating the newly installed subcoolers and pumps. This update's goal to halve the time it takes to fuel future Starships, bringing it all the way down to the 45-minute mark for 4,600 tons of fuel. That is more than 100 tons per minute. Makes you see these pumps with different eyes, right? The tank farm won't be in much use without the next lineup of prototypes, and for that our focus shifts to the build site. The first step here is the high bay, the construction hub where SpaceX is assembling Starships. Currently, this mammoth structure shelters 2 prototypes, Ship 30 and Ship 31. Ship 30, positioned to the right, saw its assembly completed in late August, followed by extensive internal work. On October 9th, through the lens of our photographer John, we witnessed this prototype emerge from the high bay. Was it moved for testing? Not yet. It was merely repositioned, a necessary shuffle given the high bay's space constraints. It's paving the way for aft flaps installation. During its brief appearance, we spotted an interesting change compared to its predecessor, Ship 29. Any true Starship experts around? Let's test it. Notice anything different? Pause the video and share your answer in the comments. No cheating. Alright, ready for the reveal? This particular ship doesn't sport the nose cone antennas used for telemetry transmissions back to the ground. Instead, these were moved and are now nestled beneath the payload bay, clustered together. Perhaps they are just easier to integrate this way. Since its return, Ship 30 was equipped with one of its flaps, standing by for the second. When ready, its next journey likely leads to Massey's for some stress testing. So for Starship 31, the one situated to the left, its stacking concluded on October 3rd. Another one done. Bonkers. This marks a 34-day period from its inception to completion. To give you a point of reference, Ship 30's assembly spanned a mere 28 days. While Ship 31 took an additional 6 days, the speed of construction remains unbelievably quick. There simply isn't another company in the world that can produce rockets this fast, not even taking the size into account. In the front of the high bay lies the ring yard, the temporary resting place where sections of Starships await their turn for stacking. Here you'll find segments designated for Booster 13 as well as the aft section of Ship 34. 34! What captures our interest the most is the newly spotted nose cone for Ship 32. Nose cones are typically the first part done for prototype construction at Starbase. This suggests that work on Ship 32 is imminent. Behind the ring yard stands mighty Mega Bay. Although SpaceX might be in the process of adding a VAB-type sliding door to shield vital components from dust, for now our view inside remains unhindered and crystal clear. In typical SpaceX style, the interior is like an ant's nest, hosting a party for 4 super heavy boosters. Booster 11 is currently partying at the rear end of the Mega Bay, while Booster 10 claims its place on the dance floor, the new engine installation platform. Once it's removed from this stand, it should be Raptor time. Let's give it 33 brand new Raptor V2 engines. We're not done. Booster 12 sits in anticipation of its upcoming cryo tests, and Booster 13 is growing week by week. Currently, its LOX tank is missing only the aft section. Upon its completion, we expect to see the construction of the methane tank, 4 super heavy boosters in the pipeline. And in the not too distant future, construction of new prototypes will also kick off at the second mega bay, increasing capabilities even further. The top deck layer of this bay is nearing completion. Given the recent delivery of 2 bridge crane trolleys, it's only a matter of time before we can see the installation of the quartet of grinders, which will serve as tracks for these trolleys. Over at the Star Factory, rapid progress is evident. The cladding for the building's second phase has been fully put in place, and the subsequent section is almost entirely outfitted with tiles. It is starting to look fancy. Completion of the first nose cone production segment is anticipated in just a few weeks. With the mid-bay no longer being in the way, there is potential for the Star Factory's expansion towards the left, surpassing the dimensions of the first phase. This could compensate for the area that was taken away on the building's right side. SpaceX doesn't own this little patch of grass. It's crazy, I know. Next, let's go to the Sanchez site. Finally, there is some construction activity centered around the ground fabrication building. Previously, this structure had to be disassembled due to its interference with Star Factory's expansion. Now, after a period of silence, the wall cladding installation has commenced. While its precise function remains uncertain, in the past it was primarily used for fabricating transport stands for boosters and ships. Given SpaceX's potential future demand for these stands, it's plausible that the building will continue to serve its original purpose. Let me share a secret with you about how I manage highly work-intensive days with a freshly cooked and healthy meal from Factor. Big thanks to Factor, a part of the HelloFresh family, for changing the game when it comes to meals at home. Factor has been a lifesaver for me with their dietitian-approved gourmet chef-crafted meals that are both delicious and ready in just 2 minutes. No grocery shopping, no messy prep, and no cleanup required. As someone who's enjoying both HelloFresh and Factor, I can't emphasize enough how these meals have simplified and diversified my dining experience, especially with my packed schedule. Whether you're on keto, vegan, or just looking for protein-packed meals, Factor's got you covered. Ready to dive into a world of tasty convenience? Factor is giving the What About It audience a sweet deal. For this month, get 50% off your first box. Just head to factor75.com or hit the link in the description and use code FELIX50 at checkout. Dive into a world of gourmet convenience. Cheers to Factor for supporting the channel. Journeying to the Massey's test site, our go-to place for the strangest of all prototypes, we find the surprisingly normal Ship 29 undergoing yet another cryogenic test. With 2 tests already carried out in September, an additional one seemed unlikely. Yet on October 4th, both of Starship 29's tanks geared up for another round of testing, only for the fueling to come to a sudden halt. This abrupt stop could indicate that either it was really just a short test or that something went wrong and it was aborted. The testing procedure at Massey's isn't your average cryogenic test. The ship test stand here boasts 6 thrust rams. 3 for simulating the sea level Raptors and another 3 designated to emulate the vacuum-optimized engines. These thrust rams serve a crucial role by exerting force at the exact location where a Raptor engine would during a static fire or even actual flight. The intent is to replicate how the prototype might behave under such conditions, avoiding the risk of a massive explosion. Imagine a scenario where a production flaw in the aft dome isn't spotted by quality control, only becoming apparent upon exerting pressure. Without thrust rams, such an issue might only surface during a static fire, with the prototype filled to the brim with propellant. And then rapid unscheduled disassembly is the result. Best case, the prototype is rendered unfit for flight. Worst case, the entire test stand is no longer usable. When employing thrust simulators, the worst potential outcome is a spill of liquid nitrogen or oxygen at the test site. Much better. The same goes for the booster test stand, located behind the ship stand. This one is armed with its own set of thrust rams, a total of 13, emulating the center cluster of Raptors. Do you know how they test the outer 20 engines? How are they simulated? Meet the legendary Can Crusher. Outfitted with an impressive 33 thrust simulators, it can mimic every single super heavy engine. We look forward to seeing Booster 12 undergo some torture using one of these devices soon. That came out wrong. Lastly, John managed to snap some shots of Ship 27's aft section mounted within a structure known as the nose cone cage. This setup seeks to emulate peak dynamic pressure, regarded as one of the most challenging phases of the flight of any rocket. It remains a mystery whether the prototype has already been tested. Any ideas as to why this prototype is here and not at the Can Crusher? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read as many as I can. Quick heads up, YouTube might have unsubscribed you without your knowledge. Not kidding, they seem to do this frequently. Very important task, double check that subscribe button so that you don't miss our updates. While you're checking, hit the like button and consider becoming a wise supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. Everyone gets the same perks regardless of your contribution. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, now including aerial and ground photos of SpaceX's progress and countless other extras on top. The next flyover will likely happen on the day you watch this episode. No matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. The link to our Patreon page is in the description. Thanks to all the supporters who help fulfill dreams on our team. We can't thank you enough. You rock. While the team at Starbase is tirelessly working on the next great Starship to ensure a perfect flight, let's shine a spotlight on the incredible Falcon 9 crew, cause these guys rock too. For these masterminds have recently achieved an awe-inspiring 70 launches this year alone, surpassing last year's record. And guess what? That is only a bit more than 2/3 of the missions this year, as SpaceX is aiming for a whopping 100 launches in 2023. This number has a real chance of being achieved, mainly thanks to Starlink missions. Remember that last launch we dove into? Group 6-18 back in September. It marked a second reuse of a Falcon 9 booster for a mind-blowing 17th time. Since then, the pace hasn't slowed. In a mere month, we've witnessed 4 more Starlink missions, Group 7-3, 7-4, 6-19 and 6-21, adding a combined total of 86 V2 mini satellites. This boosts the overall Starlink count close to a mind-blowing 4,900 satellites. Here's something intriguing. Did you know that the first batch from these launches introduced the updated V2.1 minis? While they're almost twins to the original V2s, they have one significant feature: better space lasers. While space lasers are always good to have, they aren't there to protect us against the worst scum of the universe. Originally, Starlink satellites had a pretty significant limitation. They were able to communicate only with ground stations on the surface. While Starlink is still mainly using these stations to this day, there is one issue with them. Once a satellite zooms past its range, it hits a communication bottleneck. That is why, starting from the 1.5 generation onwards, each satellite is equipped with an optical laser interlink. These lasers enable data transfer between satellites, transforming the entire Starlink communication game. This groundbreaking change opened up Starlink access in remote spots like the vast expanse of the oceans, or even extremely remote places like our North and South poles. The new lasers on board the V2.1 satellites boast an impressive throughput of 100 gigabits per second. However, it is tough to say how big of a leap in capability this is, since we are in the dark about the previous laser specs. Regardless, this change should help bridge the digital divide, connecting even more individuals to the internet. While Starlink is championed as the holy grail of connectivity, some concerns about potential implications of this constellation surface more and more. A recent Aerospace Corporation study for the FAA suggests that each Starlink satellite upon re-entry might give birth to 3 debris fragments weighing around 300 grams or 10.5 ounces. The study also analyzed all satellite constellations that are projected to be deployed by 2035, not just Starlink. If these projections hold water, the report states that there will be a 61% chance that someone will die from being hit by such debris, with an average of someone being killed every other year from then on out. Death by space laser. Anyone have a Starlink umbrella at hand? But don't go into full panic mode now. SpaceX, when securing their Starlink deployment license, assured the FCC that re-entry would leave zero debris behind. In fact, SpaceX has actually done something they don't do too often. They responded to these claims. Elon Musk's company argues that the aerospace company's analysis was based on outdated studies that overlook the actual materials used in Starlink's construction. SpaceX has also called out to the FAA for green-lighting this study without a thorough validation. Both the FAA and the Aerospace Corporation are looking at feedback right now. They better do. For the moment, Starlink and similar satellite systems appear safe enough. There are clear business motives for why these satellites need to deorbit safely. But with an increased number of satellite constellations entering the skies, the risk will continue to grow. With the recent October 6th liftoff of Amazon's Kuiper satellites, a new player enters the space-based internet arena, potentially rivaling Starlink. Though famous for lightning-fast deliveries and a lot of controversies, Amazon's journey to orbit has been anything but a one-day delivery, pun intended. Initially, Amazon put its money on the RS-1 rocket from ABL Space to deploy the first Kuiper prototypes. However, a hiccup in its inaugural flight resulted in not only loss of the vehicle, but also considerable damage to the launch facility. They haven't launched anything since. The backup plan hinged on the Vulcan Centaur, the latest offering from United Launch Alliance. But as you know from watching our episodes, this rocket has its own challenges, and with its debut delayed until December at the earliest, Amazon's patience wore thin. After finally losing it, Bezos' company just mounted the duo of satellites on the tried and true Atlas V in the 501 configuration, meaning 5-meter fairing, 0 solid rocket boosters, and 1 Centaur upper stage engine. And to no surprise, the rocket successfully soared to space on October 6th. What's intriguing about this mission is that Atlas V in this configuration can take up to 8,000 kilograms or 17,500 pounds to low Earth orbit. With estimates suggesting each Kuiper satellite weighs around 700 kilograms or 1,550 pounds, it seems Amazon tapped into a fraction of this potential. Unless other unknown payloads were on board. Oddly enough, the company has played its cards close to its chest regarding these satellites. Not a single image has been shared publicly, and they even restricted ULA from showcasing the payload during the live broadcast of the launch. NRO vibes. Yet the silver lining here is the emergence of another contender in the satellite internet landscape. As consumers, we benefit from this brewing competition as it typically translates to lower prices and better service in the future. We know you love reusable rocket technology, and we couldn't help but end today's episode on a high note featuring some footage from Stoke Space's most recent hop test. Stoke Space released a promotional video highlighting some behind-the-scenes moments from the hop, as well as their future plans of their impressive second stage of their Nova rocket. Satellite capture and return, landing on the moon or anywhere on Earth, orbital refueling, and so much more. Stoke Space's Nova rocket, which is fully reusable by the way, is worth following. The link to the full video is in our description. It is worth checking out. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. A month later. Further. I had to burp. Ho. Ho. Mild Starlink. Starship. Although space... I'm sorry.